Welcome back to Wall Tactics. We're here to talk about War Horde and Bully Boyz leading what's left over, at least, of the Great WAAAGH. Welcome back to Wall Tactics, where we're here to talk about the stats and the facts. Today, we're going to talk about how the Orks did at WTC, and then look at one of my personal little buddies on the Discords, good channels list that he did as well. So, lot to look at today. Of course, let's start with our sponsors, the Baron of Dice. Of course, they help us actually do our paint competition. Shout out to our paint winner. So, of course, check out them out in our description for a 5% discount because nobody likes taxes. Of course, here's our winner actually being presented on screen. He is showing off his Baron of Dice that he did end up winning. So, shout out to him. So, like always, I like to start with the facts. So, right here, we have the stats on the table. As of this weekend, Orks are sitting at a 40% win rate, okay? As of 7 weeks, it's a 42% win rate. Now, when we first looked at it, I'd say I think I waited roughly 4 to 3 weeks before I looked at the stats for the first time, and it was Orks were all over the place doing horribly. And I said even on then, I think we would get to about 42% win rate. I still think there's a chance that this would even drop, to be honest. There's a chance that we still continue to drop below 42% win rate, and we'll just see what happens with that. I think what's good is that we've seen Astra Militarum and Tyranids that GW is willing to look at factions that do terribly, especially if they're not winning any events, which of course we've seen that we did have a event winner, quote unquote, because he did end up kind of giving that back. So even then we don't really have a winner. But of course we have War Horde with the 44% win percent, not win percent, probably win percent, yes, of this weekend. And then 42% overall. Then Bully Boyz with another 40, and then 42% as of 7 weeks. Dreadmob, of course, we know Dreadmob is very popular, and I know that Dreadmob is a 33% win rate, guys. But of course, if you're an Ork player like me, you know that there's a lot of the time that Ork players are just simply going to take Dreadmob, and they're going to just I don't want to be say mean, but they're going to go for the lulls, right? They're going to go for the narrative play. It looks very beautiful. You're going to go for, shout out to the Fighting Fedora, for something like the Grot Revolution, right? Where you're going to just be out there trying to getting stuck in with killer cans and having a bunch of grounds, having a good old time. But Green Tide with 33% win rate, and then Cultist with 30% win rate. It's funny because I did see Auspix Tactics videos, and he does go over how you see the stat on the right where it shows higher win rates as of 7 weeks. Of course, these are with way smaller margins of players, guys. You got to understand that we've looked at this over the weekends. There'll be about 2 to 3 Green Tide players, 0 to 1 Cult of Speed players, and then 0 to 3 the Hunt players, followed by whatever's left over of Dreadmob, Bully Boyz, and War Horde. So in reality, the actual, accurate stats you could say, because there's a large enough player pool, would be War Hordes, Bully Boyz, and Dreadmobs. I would say the Green Tide win rate is almost significant, like statistically insignificant, considering that the player pool is so tiny. You really don't really know, right? If something's lower than like 5% overall, you can almost consider insignificant or irrelevant. So I would say that falls more actually in Cult of Speed, right? Cult of Speed is so insignificantly played that less than 5% of the player base overall have ever used Cult of Speed. Green Tide is a little more played, but as the stats, as the nerfs, we've seen that the Green Tide has just fallen off. It's a tedious army to use, and then also Nexus nerfing you on top of the fact that other armies have the ability to kill you just means, even in my opinion, even though today we're going to look over a WTC player who did use Green Tide, I still think for the normal, we'll just say baseline human, for you anime lovers, playing something like Green Tide just is way too much backbreaking effort for just losing a lot of models and having to get a lot of stuff on the table. Yet narratively, it's hilariously awesome fun, and I personally am a Green Tide style player. That being said, like a Dreadmob will always look crazy statistically because people will just say, I'm gonna bring my Stomper, or I'm gonna bring my Killer Cans, I'm bring all my Death Dreads, and not really make sense to how I can actually score, just kind of end up on the table, right? But today we're gonna look at a War Horde list, a Bully Boyz list, and a Green Tide list, right? So let's start getting into it. Actually, before we get into that, let's get into the faction versus faction. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Whoa, for the evening, for the gits. Of course, like always, we just looked at the overall stats, how the Orks did this weekend, and each detachment did, and my thoughts. Now we're looking at the actual faction versus faction. So I get this from Goonhammer. I like to look at this because whenever we look at the path to victory. Something to take into consideration is who did you end up playing that's A, good in the meta overall, we'll say like Sisters of Battle at the time of the recording, or B, good for the Orks or bad for the Orks specifically to go into, right? It might be a faction that's not seen as specific, like too strong, but for us it could be strong, and that's why something like this will be interesting to go over for faction. That's why we do this, even though of course stats are just general numbers. You as the player in the general make the biggest determining factor. So we have as our worst matchup right now Leagues of Voltan. I'm not necessarily surprised of that, as I would say Sagittarius have the perfect annoying toughness to Orks at T10, and then being able to scout, take a bunch of space on the table, and then Leagues of Voltan themselves and infantry being like T6, meaning that even Orks being strength 5 kind of sucks for us and some of our more punchy units until the wall, and then we fall back into our wounding them on 5s. They get Armor of Contempt. They have a lot of the same strengths as Space Marines, but a bit more durability and mobility in weird cases, right? And then of course we hate the grudges, haha. Grudges and some of their strats for extra sustained, right? So Leagues of Voltan, Death Guard with a double sustained hit. Space Wolves, we're going to talk about quite a bit today, as some of the players ran to the League Space Wolves, as they're very popular. You should very much know Space Wolves, how they work. I would say know the Sons of Rust and know the Stormlands for the most part. Of course, and now we have Drukhari. I would say they have the best, what would say, combined arms into Orks, as their Dark Lances is great, their anti-infantry is great, their mobility is great for Orks. If you're lacking just 30 flash kits or something, you're gonna have a hard time taking them off the table. It's just a weird matchup. And of course, we have the old straight up meta strong unit factions right here between Blood Angels, Orks with a 40% win rate into Blood Angels. It's not terrible, considering if you look at something like a Dread Mob, I would say, or a Cultist, for the most part, are going to have losing games into that. Even the Huns would have a losing game into that. So knowing that really Bully Boyz and War Horde are the only two detachments that are going to try to hold up to that, and Blood Angels are played at the most competitive level. There's guys that we even know, I would say as our community, that move over to Blood Angels that are Ork players that are trying to play them competitively because they have more, we'll say, reliable rules, right? We don't want to bash people for playing more reliable rules. It's just they have more reliable rules, more reliable outcomes for competitive people to go after. Therefore, that's how this number's going to look, how it was for us before when we had Bully Boyz, right? And such. So Tyranids are one of those nightmare matches for Orks, boys. They have all the different combined arms you hate as well, for damage 3 profiles. They have flamers. They have great Overwatch. They have super cheap monsters that are hard for you to kill and get good trades out of combat. Battle Shock actually sucks for Orks. Shadows of the Warp can actually swing the game because we rely on our strats to throttle. They call Shadow when you call your wall. That's the perfect time for you to fail your Battle Shock, and then you can't pop strats that you need. Very annoying. Orks, Tyranids themselves, I would say, on the most casual player basis, Tyranids are one of the most hardest matchups I hear on the day-to-day basis for Ork players right now. Then we have Adeptus Sororitas, of course. The Bringers of Flame is tearing up the meta right now as a whole. Not going to surprise anybody. World Eaters are great. Necrons, Thousand Sons, of course. These are just great armies that, if they're great by Billy, they've been great throughout the whole edition, you'd say, for the most part. Therefore, if you're going to run into elite pilots, if you know the rules, you can have good outcomes into them. If you don't, you can get ran over by them, right? I would say that's the best way to look at World Eaters, Necrons, Thousand Sons. They're a little better state overall. People that are memeing with, will say something like Dread Mob or the Hunt, not necessarily dreaming, but playing with the Hunt. You're going to lose to these factions because you're not going to have the best rules into them sometimes. But with the other basic detachments like War Horde and Bully Boyz that people are more reliable, you can take these factions on and have good outcomes. It really comes up to you as the pilot. So let's look at some of these players of this weekend and how the players actually did. What I want to start with is the Warmasters from the WTC. So these are the single players events, and I went with the number 1 performing Ork player from the singles events, which this was Francisco Ventura from Portugal. So excuse me. So he only lost 1 game, and then he had 1 draw. So that's pretty sick. So let's take a look at him, because I do have a slide for this, so it's better presentation for my kids. So of course we have Francisco Ventura, and shout out to all that gets in the chat. See you guys. I know it's late. So we have War Horde, double Beast Boss, 1 with Cunning but Brutal, Gazgul Traka, War Boss with Follow Me Lads, followed by another War Boss, 2 Battle Line units, which are both Beast Nagaboy units, followed by 3 trucks, 1 10-man unit of Flash Kits, 2 minimum size units of Gretchen, one minimum size unit of Mega Knobs with a twin kill saw and a power claw, right? Like we always talk about when you're looking at what your Mega Knobs bringing with gas, you're bringing one power claw, one kill saw, because you're getting sustained and lethal on the wall, and you're getting, just built in with gas on himself on 5+. Therefore, you're just going to look at your opponent what you need, and you're going to pick that profile. Since you're not going to be able to use both of them, it's not an extra attack, guys, right? If you're a newer player, understand one power claw means you're going to get 3 power claws attack using one twin kill saw. It means you're going to get just straight up 2 kill saws attack, unless it's the law, of course, right? The lack of them not being twin link is irrelevant. For a basic, I would say if you're running a 5-man unit of Mega Knobs, they need to be twin kill saw, because you're not getting the gas potential, +1 to hit, +1 to wound, and the lethal 5+ sustains. So that's why that's the best matchup, like combo, if you're bringing your Mega Knobs, but you want to bring them with gas, which I say 2 to 3 is all you need. Then we have 2 what I like to call scalpel units of knobs. In this case, he's using them more like machetes, where he's just straight up running in there with 2 bricks of killing knobs, followed by 3 5-man units of Storm Boys. I think it's awesome how we're loving Storm Boys even more and appreciating their potential. One thing I think people are appreciating them more for now in Nexus is just running out and touching stuff, as before you used to have conditions that you could actually do at secondaries while you're in combat. Storm Boys being able to advance and charge all game means that they're not only there to just drop and do a secondary, I would say they're not even in there to drop into someone's backfield, as most opponents screen very well with Grey Knights and Necrons around, and redeploy shenanigans. It's, for the most part, you're just letting them know I can do it. You're going to get screened. But so really you have 3 units, you go, okay, one's for the first game, I'm going to be able to jump into the middle of the table. One's for my screening when someone tries to get into me and get a charge off, and then the third unit's for deep strike, for example, right? Or maybe even the second unit's like, I'm going to help it in an odd offensive push, where it's going to be a unit that runs up next to my beast boss unit, and it's going to throw a grenade at someone for me and not even charge, right? Something like that. That's how he would say he would run 3 mans of Beast Snagger Boy units, and that's really like Beast Snagger Boys, 3 units of Storm Boys. So I love this list. No fat really on it. Pretty elite. And most of the killing potential just comes from the 4 what was say two Beast Snagger Boy units and then 2 knob units. Then you got just gas chilling there, right? Gas is the multi-damage. This is playing very simple on the battlefield, right, guys? You're pretty much supporting 2 on 2 different flanks, and gas is holding the middle. There you go. 3 Storm Boys to start doing the trades off. Boss Nick Rat to let them know if I needed to redeploy into someone's backfield, then I can do it, or I can play the early game and kind of stage up and slowly start leaking points to get you to come out to play. Really like it. I thought it's back to the Ork basics, but back to the core. This very much looks like an Ork index. So let's take a look at his win path for Francis Ventura, as he only lost 1 game at the Warmasters. So going into, and I'll take a look at the chats, don't worry, in a bit, guys, so make sure you guys get stuck in there, just letting more people fill up, because we started later this evening. He's Blood Angels, Sons of Sanguinius, which of course Sons of Sanguinius break that threshold with their +2 to hit, +2 to strength, where they can actually wound us effectively, where normally they kind of don't. So we have Lamartis, 2 units of Sanguinary Priests with jump packs. These are their 5+ Piano Plane Boys, 5+ Piano Plane Boys. And then the Sanguinor as their Warlord. 1 unit of Assault Intercessors as the battle line, followed by 3 units of Assault Intercessors with jump pack. 2 units of Ball Predators with the Storm Cannon. I actually did, of course, come and show you the Ball Predator, as we might look at the Blood Angels a bit today. So let's take a look at their Ball Predator real quick, in case you're not familiar with it, for my gets. So in all, when it says it's overcharged engine ability, means you can reroll the advances, and then all the ranged weapons on the vehicle get assault. Therefore, all of the flamers that it will bring will all be assault. So you get the 2 flamers on the side, 2 heavy flamers, as that's a warrior option, and then you get the Ball Flamestorm Cannon, which is 18 inches, D6 +3, strength 6, -2, 2 damage. Very, very nice profile, as that's pretty much looking like the Land Raider Redeemer profile, for example, right? Very, very similar. It's like a Land Raider Redeemer profile on top, and then you also have the 2 heavy flamers, which are string 5, -1, torrent 12-inch. So these are advancing. They're re-rolling the advance so they can get more coverage, get more into you faster. So these Ball Predators are help putting up that pressure, and then of course they're staging up, so you might even want to overwatch you as you're trying to get into their counter punching units, right? Then we have Death Companies with jump pack. Everybody loves and knows what those gets do. Infiltrators, Scout Vanguards with Jump Pack, and then a Caladius Assassin. What you really are happy about here as an Ork player when you're sitting with War Horde is one, you don't see much long range shooting here. There's no way he's really popping your trucks. You still have to be KG. You don't want to get wrapped, stuff like that. But it means he's not necessarily getting the advantage on you every time on the initiative. You can still at least stage up. For example, right? You have your safe bunkers, mobile platforms. Of course, you have fight on death with War Horde, which is extremely important as you as a player, as an Ork player, to be very precise with your strategies in your mind to know I need to not overwhelm myself with CP right here out of a reactionary response in this matchup, as I need the CP advantage to swing these combats. So that is definitely a skill matchup, and I would say he did very great job there, as he did end up winning that game 13-14. Let's take a look at his second game, as Blood Angels are a very winnable matchup for Orks, but they're very difficult as well, as pretty much all the melee matchups are for Orks for the most part, unless it's like straight up 2 armor spams, right? Then you guys get skews are different. Now we run into his second matchup, which is Team China for Team China for Tau Empire. I've seen that Tau, and I'm like communist fish. Tau Empire. Then we have the Monka detachment. We have Cadre Fireblade, followed by Commander Enforcer in Battle Suit with the Exemplar of the Monka. Breacher Team, which are excellent value units. So 3 Breacher Teams followed by 2 Devilfish. We have a Crisis Sunforged Battle Suit followed by Hammerhead Gunshits, Krook Carnivores, Pathfinders, 2 units of Piranhas, Riptide Battle Suits, 3 units of Riptide, super effective. These are high damage units, flat 3 damage all over the battlefield, good AP. Okay, nice to see them, kind of durable. So I'm in from bringing them, right? 3 units of self battle suits. These guys can infiltrate, very cheap for 60 points. But this is something that, for example, your 30. Your Storm Boys unit can go out and kind of start to trade with if they get a little bit too aggressive and put them on the line against you as an Ork player. Of course, when it comes down to Tau, as always, hoping that you go first is quite important. Hoping that you stage up and pressure appropriately is very important. And understanding that you really just got to get into them and start touching them as soon as possible. Of course, their detachment ability runs out as the game goes on. And so you as player just needs to understand the matchup and hope that the mission's kind of not necessarily in your favor, but allows you to actually play the game out right. If you're playing maybe something like Purge the Foe, sometimes that could be a little difficult for Tau for it sometimes, as in the beginning of the game they'll put their screens up to do it, but as they blow your army away and you lose killing potential, that could be a harder matchup. So I don't think that was Purge the Foe on that one. Luckily, right? Hopefully. Then we go into his third matchup. He did win that Tau 114 to 14-6, by the way. Then he goes to his third matchup, which is the Thousand Suns. So these are respectable armies nonetheless, of course, at the WTC War. So Warmaster. So he has a good path going on here, guys, that he's getting some good matchups here. So he has Thousand Suns, Aruman, Infernal Master, Magnus the Red, Thousand Suns Sorcerer. So he has the ability to kind of stop your moving capabilities with his sorcerers and their movement debuffs. Then we have 1 10-man unit of rubrics, followed by 4 units of 5 rubrics and a Zangor, 1 Rhino, Metalix Vortex Beast, and a Thousand Sun Cultist. Very, very character heavy list right here, right? You do love the fact that you at least have Beast Snagger Boy units. You have a bunch of AP for any time you do get into combat. You like that the Beast Snagger Boy units can at least pop the like Vortex Beast. You can at least have double threats on the battlefield for Magnus, so he doesn't get too lenient and allow you to run into him too willy-nilly. Nonetheless, like I would say before, when you're talking about this high level of play, the mission is very, very important. Who end up going first here and what the familiar it is with each detachment, which these players would be very familiar. Thousand Suns, like I said earlier, when we look at faction versus faction, is an army you can beat as an Ork player, because even a somewhat diminished unit of Orks can run into these T-Suns once they get touched and start beating them up, limiting their scoring, killing them. But you just got to be capable and aware of all of their movement shenanigans, all of their damage throttling potential, and their movement debuffs to you. So shout out to Francisco for dealing with Thousand Suns, getting a 13-point win right there. Now he's going into his fourth game, which this was a tie, which is respectable because ties happen, especially WTC. It was funny because when we looked at Meta Monday, he said that the WTC Warmasters events, I believe it was, the singles event, this one itself, had about 41% win rate, which is the lowest one he's ever recorded for an event because there were so many ties, because it was like this style of platform of scoring. Therefore, him only having one tie is actually pretty nice, because a lot of people just were having several ties at these events. So he went to straight War Dogs, War Dog spam. So he has a War Dog Stalker followed by another War Dog Stalker. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 War Dog Brigands, and then 4 Carnivores followed by Nurglings and the Pox Bringer. So I would consider, instead of the Prox Bringer, just bringing a big unit of Nurglings would probably be more value to you in this list. But who am I? Who am I to talk about a WTC players list? Nonetheless, I can see how this is such a difficult matchup for most Orks. So much OC with these. We do not trade well into them. A unit of Beast Snagger Boys, a truck, and a Beast Boss costs more than a War Dog Brigand, for example. It's very difficult to close the distance, as if you do it too willy-nilly, they can do combined arms actions of Brigands pop you and then Carnivores charge you in your trucks, for example. And if you run into them, let's say into a Carnivore unit and you run into and you don't kill it with your knobs, because your knobs don't reach the strength threshold that you really want to deal with these small Titans, which pretty much sucks, right? Because we're strength 9, strength 10 on the wall. That's not great. That's not ideal. You can very much bounce on killing multiple Carnivores. They're left over. They sweep up your knobs. So this is a game that you're going to play very cagey. So you're being cautious. They have great OC with this. Being able to move the terrain is very problematic for us, as for the most part, when you're going into Knights, at least the old strat used to be, kind of still is move blocking them, right? So with mobility. So shout out to him for getting that 10-10 draw, as a lot of the time when you're two both effectively skilled players and it's a night matchup, it's a hard one to win for Orks. Winnable, because Orks can be a lot of different factions. The game's balanced right now, but definitely a difficult matchup. Shout out to him for getting a draw there. Then we go into his 5th matchup, where he got the Bringers of Flame Adepta Sororita. So he went to a meta bully. So he went to the Demifuge, Morgan Val, and the Triumph of St. Catherine. I feel like the Triumph and Morgan Val are like auto takes, right, guys? Just auto takes. We have Sisters of Battle, 2 units of Emulators, 2 units of Castigators, a Dominion, 2 units of Dominion Squad, Paragon War Suits, 2 units of 3 Paragon War Suits, 2 units of Seraphon, and then a Sisters Novitiate Squad. I actually am a fan of this list. Having multiple of those Dominion squads means you can go break them into combat squads a bit better. Emulators, Castigators, not too much that you feel like you get overwhelmed. So it's a very, pretty well thought out list, yet I am suspect to believe that my boy went first here. Hey, Francisco, if you're out there and you see this, let me know. Did you go first on the Sisters matchup? Because getting a 14-point win here, because Sisters kind of work in a similar sense to Tau, like we talked about earlier, where you really got to just close the distance on them, guys. I know they're scary. I know that they want to meet you in the mid-table and kind of just kill you up like that. Don't stand on the mid-table, right? But you do want to start pressuring them on the side flanks. Don't let them drop into your backfield and get their devastating flamers off on you. That way they can start pressuring you and getting the initiative. Make them kind of front on face you, where they have to pop and trying to pop your transports, and then you can disembark in the building and be kind of safe from more of their flamers or attacks. And you have to be able to understand that they're pretty soft and pretty weak, and using all your shots to finish off a unit and stuff like that. And deployment is really important as well. So Sisters are a matchup that's good for you to win as an Ork. Being able to here we go, get out of the transport, run up and touch stuff, very important for you as well. He would be a bit, I would say probably, I would say he'd be a bit confident with having Morgan Val and these Sisters all over the place, but that's where you got Gaz for, right? That's what you got Gaz for. And Gaz is punching out Morgan Val. So shout out to him, because that's a very impressive win. I would say getting a 14-point win right there. That's a well-rounded Sisters list for the most part. I didn't have, the punching, I would say, besides those vehicle, the Morgan Val's unit and the which means they can't get through buildings. So that's where you can actually stage up well. Might have been a weakness. I don't know. But let's look at his final matchup, which he actually did end up losing this. This was his final game, which is a loss, right? When we talk about path to victory, where you lose is somewhat important, guys, because it puts you into different brackets. So the fact that he didn't take a loss until the final round and took his draw kind of near the middle means Francisco Ventura was on fire for his team, Portugal, even though he, right here going into the singles event. My bad. I was so excited I just pulled up his list again. That was dumb. All right, so let's look at what he ended up going into. And of course, he went into the Sisters of Sisters. He went into the Blood Angels. I don't know why I said that. So he went into the Blood Angels, but Gladius Task Force. So it wasn't the Sons of Sanguinius. This was a weird off-meta list. And I'll tell you now, boys, I'm not going to act like I exactly understood how this list was running, right? Of course, we have the old-fashioned Apothecary Biologist with the Fire Discipline, been old faithful since Index, Librarian and Phobos Armor. Of course, we see 3 Ball Predators again, which we did talk about with the Flamers. Looking strength 6, -2, 2 damage at 18 inch. Everything's assault when you advance, and you can reroll the advance for those Ball Predators. They're heavy Flamers, Ken. So, a bunch of different Flamers for 125 points with decent defensive chassis right there. Centurion Devastator Squad. A Death Company Dreadnought. So that Death Company Dreadnought's at least going to be able to like advance and charge that one turn when he's ready to go in Gladius. So that's kind of cool. He has another Death Company Dreadnought. 3 of them actually. An Eradicator Squad, Inceptor Squad, Inceptor, Infiltrator Squad, Librarian Dreadnought, and then 2 Scout Squads. So here's the thing. From the little bit that I did try to understand from this list, because I don't, I can only know so much. What he ended up doing here was with this Librarian Dreadnought, he would make a bubble, I assume, to defend the Dreadnoughts. Either he puts them on each one flank, depending on the matchup. But this Librarian Dreadnought, because it gives abilities to not only infantry, but to even those mini dreads, right? So right here with this Librarian Dreadnought, when it says Shield of Sanguinius, Aura, Psychic, when friendly Adeptus Astartes units are within 6, they have a 5 of Fiona painting its mortal wounds and psychic attacks. Therefore, these guys actually get a built-in defensive ability to our dev wounds and other armies as well that have dev wounds. As that's changed, just like for custodes and for psychic attacks. So now these dreadnoughts that are on this matchup and all these vehicles have potential to have psychic defense. Defensive mortal wound defense, which is very annoying and problematic for us. And then you have Wings of Sanguinius, where you can actually pick up a Adeptus Astartes infantry unit within 12 of the Psyker. We have to roll for it, blah, 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 but you get uppy downy. So you get, a built-in uppy downy from the Dread Knight where you can have maybe Eradicators jump up and come down. For example, they don't have to really reliably always come off the battlefield edge, or if they do, they can move again after that, or Centurion, something like that. And then you have Bell Predators kind of stage up like little crappy versions of Land Raider Redeemers, but for the most part, they can play a somewhat similar role in that case when they have Dreadnought support for the countercharging in this case. So very, close game right here, as it was a 9-point loss, but I'm pretty sure we can understand as Ork players how that would be an interesting matchup. It's a Gladius. You're kind of like, what is this doing? There's a lot of vehicles. You get its Dreadnoughts, and then you get uppy downy, and you get our dev potential and defense. So shout out to Francisco Ventura. We'll take one more look at his list real quick with his War Horde singles events, best performing Ork player, getting 45th. He had 2 beast bosses, one with cunning but brutal for the fallback and charging, Boss Snickerat, Gazgul Thraka, of course, making his appearance on War Horde, War Boss with Follow Me Lads for that great ability to close the distance with Here We Go, War Boss, 2 Beast Nagaboy units, 3 trucks, 1 Timmy unit of flash kits. Gotta love how the flash kits made the appearance. I do wonder, hey, why wouldn't he just break them into 2 5s? As you would assume that a lot of the strats are going into other things like fighting on deaths, Umbrella Carnage. So if he has received this, shout out Francis, which you really always bring a 10. I always recommend people bring 2 5s. You let me know. Then we have 2 Gretchens, followed by Mega Knobs with the nice combo that I always mention. 2 Knob units with Power Claws. Love that they're 2 10-man units. These are straight up killy. You need to punch out these 2 armor save armies. He was ready to do that here. Then 3 5-man units of Storm Boys, as Storm Boys have become even more valuable as time has gone on. So shout out to Francisco Ventura for his singles performance, as he did quite well there, sir. So next, we will go into the Green Tide, as we have Lucas Troller. So Lucas Troller is actually a Team America, Team USA player that ended up bringing the green tide here. One of his game was on War Games Live, so you can actually go and see it, and then we'll talk about that when we actually see it. I won't spill the whole thing and everything because it's fun to watch, but I'll let you know the general gist of it. Then we have Lucas Troller did bring a bit different of a green tide list, which could get our blood flow going and juices flowing, which I think this will be a fun list to go into our shout out to the Bully Boyz list we're going to go into after this. So Lucas Troller, of course, Team America didn't do as good as they had hoped this year, which was interesting to kind of look at. But Lucas Troller still had some great games here with which people would consider a very, very weak version of Orks in this detachment and heavily nerfed detachment. So let's take a look at Lucas Troller's green tide list. You know, from what I remember, I believe it was Lucas Troller that brought the archetype of truck spam, where he was the first person, I believe, I might be wrong. This is back when my channel first started. But I believe you brought the archetype of truck spam where it was 6 trucks and then 3 of the what are now legend big tracks. So he's been on Team America. He's a reliably good Ork player. Therefore, you know, he's coming up with his new ideas. So let's take, you know, this with some thought here. It was different though. He has 2 units of Beast Boss. And I'll just tell you right now, he doesn't have any Beast Snagger Boys. Then 3 units of Pain Boys, followed by 3 War Bosses, 1 Weird Boy as the Warlord with the enhancement brutal but cunning for that secret mission play. Then he has 3 20-man units of boys. Sorry on the little thing here, I wrote 20. It's actually just a 10-man unit as his 4th unit. There for 85 points, you can see I wrote there. So he had only 3 20-man units of boys, and then he had a single 10-man unit of boys for his 4 battle line units. He had 2 trucks, 2 10-man units of flash kits, followed by a 5-man unit of flash kits, followed by a Gretchen and a Storm Boys unit. Now, what I want to talk about here for anybody that's just like, what the heck is happening with this list? Don't worry. I'm on the same page with you. We'll talk through it. I'll give you some of my thoughts here, right? One, there's been a lot of talk of what about a single Beast Boss by himself because he still gets the dev wounds. If you're not playing something like War Horde where you're re-rolling for the hits and such, then you're not really fishing for anything as well. That means you're really capped at he's getting his mathematically average output for those dev wounds. So you're not really hoping to spike in one shot an enemy vehicle. You're really hoping to kind of finish something off. So independently for 80 points, do you think his dev wound potential is where you want it to be and hoping for his max potential spike and just a straight data sheet because there's no other buffs he's getting from this detachment? For 80 points, you know, it is interesting, boys. I haven't seen anybody else run it. We've always been talking about it in the Discord and other people about it. Like, man, what about just a straight Beast Boss? You know, I haven't run it. He's quite susceptible to Overwatch, and he's going to be soft on a clapback if somebody was to, fight back and interrupt. But all in all, he made it work with the 2 units of Beast Boss with no snaggers. Of course, you mandatory have to have Pain Boys in this. So I think the fact that he brought 3 War Bosses, 3 Pain Boys, and just the straight up 60 boys is what you need to do because all the other ones are just soft targets for Call the Horde. This unit is extremely durable, extremely unreliable to kill, and gets great value out of the strats. It's pretty much the entire backbone of the detachments. So those characters plus these dudes are just straight up the whole list. The 10 unit of boys is just there to do actions for sticky or just chill. The 2 trucks are there for the flash kits, and of course that's where the Beast Boss can actually get out. So that's the weird case where maybe the Beast Boss runs up, the flash gets shoot it, do lethal, and then the Beast Boss hopefully runs up and finish it off in a weird case for like a low wound durable vehicle or monster. Then he has a 5-man unit of flash kits as their great value. Now, here's the thing to keep in mind, boys, that I was going to talk about for point value, right? As Green Tide was hit so hard that it lost a lot of its defensive buffs, it lost the purpose of you bringing the characters and the boys for that case. What are you going to do per point as the backbone of this detachment? And the whole point of this detachment is to have army of attrition rate, hard to kill, be very, very low, scoring, value per unit in a sense for the amount of wounds you're getting. Therefore, flash kits sit right at that threshold. Now, a flash kit is a 16-point unit. That means per wound you're paying 8 points. A Ork Boy is 8.5 points per him, right? So data sheet per data sheet, you're getting what is considered a knob data sheet. That's a 4-up armor save, a base strength 5 save. Then you're getting a big fat gun, and you're paying half a point less per wound than you would pay for a boy. And now, of course, you're not getting the 5-up info from this detachment, but you're not paying for the characters. And you're also actually having some shooting potential. So that's where the flash kits actually make sense for a Green Tide style list, where per point, per wound, it actually goes great and makes straight up mathematically sense to go here. And actually having 4-up armor saves does make a difference for that defensive buff. So it's kind of funny. With that being said, let's take a look at his path to victory as we'll go through it. It is, we can only say so much as it's for teams, so we don't know what people were thinking when they put him into the matchup, what his actual, attempt, what he was actually trying to do. Sometimes people know they're going to lose the game, and they're just going to try to get as many points as possible, and they have I just need to get 9 points here, or I need to get 6 points here, whatever it is. We don't know that, so we're just going to look at what it looked like, what killed him, go through it real quick. So his first matchup was against Team Slovakia, which was Craft World Eldar. Now we have Artark, Wayleaper, Death Jester, Farseer. 1 unit of Guardians, Rangers, Shadow Spectre, Swooping Hawks, a trope, another trope of Harley Quinns, 2 units of Warp Spiders, Sky Weavers, 3 units of Squad Weavers, 1 Wind Rider, a Night Spinner. Okay, so Night Spinner making a shout out for a comeback for a Night Spinner. Movement deduction and such. 2 War Walkers, and then a straight up Wave Serpent. Now, one thing that we'll talk about, shout out, I'll give a sneak peek on the War Games live stream, is that people think because Eldar have a lot of volume and just stuff, that they do fine into this kind of matchup. I would say because they're kind of more MSU, and of course there's different, they're going to see as we go through this, there's different obviously lists and backbones of Eldar, is that Eldar don't really like to face a Horde, as if Eldar all shoot into this unit and it kind of blood surges somewhere, and because an activation hides a little more and they pull guys, and then they rebuild and they get a little closer and they regen dudes, and then they go and the Eldar's like, well, next turn I'm going to shoot you again and then I'm going to charge you. Well, the Ork player's like, well, I'm just going to interrupt. So if you charge me multiple units, I'm just going to pick all those little crappy Eldar units up, even if I only have 10 Ork boys and a war boss left in that unit and a pain boss. So it's really weird, and that's where the flash kits get kind of good Overwatch value here. So in this matchup, Lucas did end up putting a 20-point win up right there. So that's almost like an ideal matchup. Now, in his second matchup, he ended up from here on, Lucas had hardy game. So he had a tie here. Let's take a look at his second game, and I'll take a shout out in chat after this. So say what you guys got to say here after this, after we go through this a bit. So his second one was against Romania with the Blood Angels. These are with the Sons of Sanguinius with the Red Thirst. So we have a Chaplain with Jump Pack, Commander Dante, Lamartis, Sanguinary Jump Pack, and the Sanguinor. The reason I'm not really spending too much time going through the data sheets is everybody knows what they're doing right now, and their book's been announced, so it might change. Now we have 2 Assault Intercessors with Jump Pack, 3, excuse me, loads. 3 units of Assault Jump Pack Intercessors. I love that they can get the Strength 6. Not for us, that sucks against us, but you would think +2 Strength feels pretty freaking great on Jump Pack units, right? For volume, and then you're putting mortal wounds with the shoulder bashes. Then we have 2 units of Death Company with Jump Packs, followed by a brick of Sanguinary Guard. A lot of time people don't bring the Sanguinary Guard. Very expensive. They do get the good threshold as well with their strength encounters, but for the most part, very, very elite units, and that's where you really, really just would have a hard time kind of killing these guys with a 2-up armor save for the most part, hoping that your knobs and Warmaster are able to kill this guy. Then you have a Vanguard Veteran Squad with a Jump Pack, followed by a Caladius Assassin. So as you Ork players would definitely know here, you can see how this could be a detrimental matchup. Of course, for the most part, I don't recommend overwatching with the 10-man flash kits, so you don't get Overwatch, you don't get rerolls anymore. But in this sort of matchup, this is why I bring in 10-man units of flash kits for your Green Tide units, because you need something to overwatch if somebody's trying to countercharge your boys and try to take them in open field. Of course, your boys might actually be able to withstand this kind of assault. Just understand that whatever's left over, you got to make sure all your power calls are somewhere, so you can do an effective power clapback when you interrupt This is a difficult matchup. You as an Ork player, very skill heavy, as they're faster than you. They can very much get the initiative on you, and they actually have valuable units to trade. So shout out to Lucas for pulling this off as even a 10-10. That very much, in my opinion, was possibly his intention here, as Blood Angels can be a lot of different armies. So it very much might have been, hey, try to get a win or a tie here. So shout out to him for getting that. Then we have his third matchup. You win at the Thousand Suns. Like I said before, and we've seen earlier, winnable matchup for Orks. But you're talking about something like the Green Tide. Guess who has the volume to kill a Green Tide? Well, Thousand Suns. Well, what's perfect into killing Thousand Suns? Strength 6, -1, 2 damage. Well, I guess not perfect because you want more AP, but the profile is at that threshold where you just start picking up Thousand Sun Rubric Marines. So it's really nice to have a shoot back. That means this ends up becoming more of an interesting game than if these were simply some boys with some more melee dudes behind them. So we have Armin with discounts each, Exalted Sorcerers, Infernal Master, Infernal Master, Infernal Master, and then Magnus. So of course, character heavy. We have 1, 2, 3 units of Rubrics, followed by 2 Mutilex Vortex Beast, 2 units of Cultist, followed by 3 units of Zangord Enlightened. Just looking at this, you're actually a bit happier to have Flash Kits, as we spoke about. Flash Kits, picking up Cultists very effectively, picking up Zangors, picking up Rubric Marines. And then there's just the Zangors that are sitting back there going, well, I have good ability to kill you, but please don't tag me, please don't tag me, which is what you're trying to do with the Green Tide as a whole. I would say, of course, always consider strategic reserving one of these units, whether it be your 20-man unit of boys in this sort of matchup where you can come off the table edge and hope to take less damage, or your Flash so you get the angle of fire so you can kill people that are trying to stand on objectives. This sort of matchup is where you do consider a strategic reserves more or less to try to keep yourself safe from their movement shenanigans with your Ork army. He did end up winning this one. Impressive, right? 11-point win. Now after this, he starts taking he starts taking his knocks. So his fourth matchup, he goes into what I would consider the hardest matchup, even when Green Tide was doing great, was the Space Wolf Stormlands. Maybe not the hardest, statistically speaking, but it was definitely one of the much harder matchups, as they actually have all the tools to really kill you. And even here, as we've seen with Lucas, as this was his lowest scoring game, he ended up taking his hits here. So we have the Lieutenant with combi weapons, so he gets to pretty much just choose an objective and give you reroll ones for the whole army. We have Lord, we have Logan Grimnar. I have no idea why I called him Lord. So he's their version of like a named character, their mini one of Higaz, I guess. I don't know. So they get the High King of Fenris, so he gets their own wall. That way, if you ever see another Ork, you really see another Space Wolf player and he brings Logan, just kind of wall when he does his little weird wall too, right? So what happens is during the charge phase, he can re-roll charges and he can re-roll the hit roll for that. So we get our wall and they get this, right? So keep that in mind. He can be on a sled, but in this case, he's just on foot. He's just a Terminator. He punches a little bit. There you go. That's his data sheet. Then we have a Wolfguard battle leader on Thunderwolf. Now, this is actually important, which I did pull this up as free gets as well, because we got learns here. So we do have lethals on the Wolfguard battle leader, very important. This guy, in this case, has Hunter's Instinct. For the most part, you might see multiple multiple Wolfguard battle leaders anywhere, because you need lethals for the mounts and such. But here he has Hunter's Instinct, which means he can come in from strategic reserves one turn earlier, which means turn one, he come off the battlefield edge. Very, very, feels pretty bad when they put too much pressure on you. What's really important for Stormlands is they can fall back charge and then, and keep charging you, so that throughout the whole game, if you're not killing them, that they're actually taking big chunks off you the entire time. So he has 1, 2, 3 units of these battle leaders with lethal, and then he has a Wolf Lord on Thunderwolf, which is essentially their version of Captain Fear. The Storm is them throttling their offensive output for some AP, which they lack. Then we have 1, 2, 3 units of Assault Intercessors with Jump Pack, 1 unit of Infiltrators, followed by 1 Scout, 1, 2, 3 bricks of Thunderwolf Cavalry, a Vindicator, which Vindicators are awesome. Everybody knows throughout the whole meta. 2-up armor saves. They can do Armor of Contempt. They can pop smoke. Very hard to shoot. Not that we're shooting them, but that's what's important for them. But really important against us is that if you run up and you tag the Vindicator into the middle table objective to share the Space Wolf OC, will say these guys actually have the potential to blow away your boy mobs because they can actually shoot blast into combat as their data sheet ability. Therefore, a Vindicator just pressuring going into the mid table saying your boys aren't going to kill me because I have a 2-up armor save, and I'm T like 11, and I give OC here. That means every time your Thunderwolf Cav unit charges off, charges back on, they're contributing with the Vindicator to OC to the mid table. So you can see how that ends up being difficult. Then you have 1, 2, 3 units of Wolfen. Therefore, the Wolfen are just great trading, 90 points. 10-man units are kind of ferocious. These 90-point units mean they're trying to hunt down the flash kits. They're trying to screen for the mobs of boys so they can't tag the Thunderwolf Cavalry. So all in all, that's a very difficult matchup, especially at the world level, right? So Lucas ended up losing that one. Then we go into his next game, which is another loss. And like I said, I think the Space Wolf Thunderwolves might be one of the hardest, if not the hardest, matchup that you have to bring there. So with that being said, we have a Thousand Suns list. We have the Exalted Sorcerers on Disc of Zeech, Infernal Master, 1,000 Suns Sorcerer, and Terminator armor. So he gives you other data sheet abilities to where he can actually do precision and other weird things. It's very fun. Aruman and the Magnus to red. We have Rubric Marines, 10 unit of Scarab Occult Terminators, 1,000 Suns Cultists, 1,000 Suns Cultists, 1,000 Suns Cultists, and then 2 units of Zangors. I really wonder, I didn't get to see this game, of course, but did Lucas Troller ended up like getting his character sniped out by this Terminators and their because I think it was the Demon Prince, right? Oh no, it's a Terminator Sorcerer Terminator armor. Sorry, that's the Demon Prince that does that. I was tripping. But he ended up losing this game. So another difficult matchup here for him, but he ended up doing well. I think I'm gonna take a second real quick and take a look at chat before I do that. So let me take a look at what chat has to say. He said wow for a lot of dudes saying here. Per point, Flash Kits and War Bikers are some of the greatest units. Played World Leaders into War Horde. War Horde into World Leaders actually works. Yes, it does. Armor saves, low AP, lacking of a bunch of 2-up damage. This would be hard. If we could get low stats and points across the table equal to Flash Kits, we would be okay. That's actually a pretty good thing to notice because it's true. If we could get more Flash Kits are a good example of what you want an Ork data sheet to look like. You don't want it to necessarily every single one to look like, hey, I'm throttling with great stats per point killing something. No, you want it to have somewhat different durability, volume of offensive output, chance to spike because something like lethal, and then them to feel like they're chaff-ish where they can die. But yeah, they also have the potential to really kill and participate in the game as a whole. So I'm on the same page there. Is that I think more things should represent how the Flash Kits are represented too. And right now, sadly, it's just we're paying out the wazoo for things that other people just get for just straight up cheap. And I think hopefully GW takes that into consideration when they go on to change us and just get us back to feeling more like a good trading Horde army, as I kind of feel like that's more or less kind of like the weakness to Orks right now. Like we talked about with the Chaos Knights and the Nids, even with Blood Angels, where not Blood Angels, never mind, take that one back, but Chaos Knights and Nids and such, is that we are having to deal with armies that they get a monster that has great defensive buffs and can survive our onslaught even on the wall, and they cost less than us. It's like, what the heck? Well, right, less CP investment, less army rule ability because it took our hall wall to deal with them, and then we just die. So that being said, I do think, as you pointed out, that they should look a little bit more like us. Let's see what else chat has to say. Enjoying the stream while I sit here and painting Death Copters. Let's go! Let them Death Copters up, boys. Death Copters are cool. Of course, they're like one of the only other armies that has data sheets that has Deep Strike, right? So Storm Boys and Death Coptus. That's all we can rely on in this world to get our deep strike. So that being said, Lucas Troller, as we back to this, get your chats in there. I'll be sure to read them. I'll get a little more active in chats he gets. He did lose this 8-point loss here. He ended up losing here, only 8 points he scored for his team. Not horrible, not a horrible loss. But a weird Thousand Suns list with the Terminators. Unusual, very unusual. Then he comes to his 6th game, which this was a 1-point loss, where he went into the Thousand Suns. Oh, sorry, not Thousand Suns. It's stupid of me. He went into Chaos Space Marines with the Pack-Bound Zealots. Now he went into 2 units of Chaos Lords, followed by Cypher. Cypher with this nice Vect capability. We have a Dark Commune, followed by another Dark Commune and another Dark Commune. 2 units of Cultist mobs, followed by a Legionnaire, another Legionnaire, another Legionnaire, another Legionnaire. Chaos Rhino. So that's, let me count my Legionnaires at once. That was annoying. 1, 2, 3, 4 units of Legionnaire, followed by 2 units of Cultist mob. Thank you. 2 units of Rhino. Here comes the juice. 3 units of Accursed Cultist, followed by a big brick of Warp Talons, a annoying Beast of Nurgle, and a Nurgling. Beast of Nurgle being able to, 1, come back on wounds, right? So if you don't kill Beast of Nurgle in a single activation, guys, in that phase, they full back health, and then they actually fight pretty good. Nurglings are just great for what they do. Warp Talons still jumping out and punching you. The Accursed Cultist units putting on the ability to just run up the table, hit you really hard, withstand your hits as well, going into a green tide. They're actually faster for different turns and more turns, and they can hit you very, very hard because they can get up to strength 6 on some of their models. They have volume of damage 2 and volume of damage 1. So it's actually kind of crappy that he ended up losing that one. You would think he has, flash kits and such for this, but the fact that he also has all these Legionnaires and all these cultists that are able to play means that it's just hard for him to get up there, as well as Cypher to really make the strats cost more if you want to interrupt or something. So he ended up losing that one. It was a close game, as you would imagine, as they're almost like a mirror of 2 different mobs that are trying to pop each other. So it seems like it would be a pretty freaking fun and awesome game, but he did end up losing one by 1 point. That game with the Dark Commune is crazy. Looking up their rules, they get great offensive output with sustain and lethals and all this weird stuff. So yeah. Then we go into his final matchup, which this was the one on War Games Live, and I was actually in the chat in there, War Games Live, and not to say I told you so to War Games Live or you gets in the chat, but I'm gonna say I told you so, because just from our all understanding and reasoning from things we've seen a lot of the time, and of course there are some swings from a little bit of luck here and there, and saves and everything comes into play. But that being said, we talked about it before. Yes, of course, something like Yvreen can go off and kill a bunch of Ork boys, and so can Howling Banshees and Striking Scorpions maybe. And you look on paper and Cabalite Warriors, and you have this not the Scourges, the witches that may be able to do this. All in all it takes is for an Eldar unit to not one-shot that Ork unit, and when the Ork unit climbs back or interrupts, whatever other units came up to touch it all die. Even if it's a diminished unit of Orks, you're gonna die. They're gonna pressure you and hold you in the back of the table, and they're going to just straight up beat the crap out of you with whatever they got left over once you close the distance. If that's the thing with Eldar, they essentially have one chance to one-shot the Orks, or they have to be fast enough and outmaneuver as kind of like Dark Eldar can do. But because Dark Eldar can fight us like guerrilla warfare and shoot us with a bunch of las cannons and such, they can deal with it. Even more something like Green Tide, because they have a bunch of empty infantry. These units are just straight up making us take saves. And then we have flash kits to shoot them away and take them away on Overwatch. We've seen that in the matchup on the stream. He did end up putting up a 19-point win on this. Yeah, a lot of the time during War Games Live, they were like, yeah, Striking Scorpion, all our player looks like he's doing great. He's going to kill these boys. The flash kits were tanking damage. The boys were tanking a bunch of damage. Ton of OC. The boys were living in the mid-table. Eldar really didn't want to run up and shoot and punch you. If they did, then they were definitely losing whatever went up there. So all in all, when this matchup, and Lucas Stroller and his, even though the Team America lost that matchup to get 3rd place or whatever, I think, or 1st place, so they ended up in 5th. He won this matchup, and I think this was one of the archetypes he really can beat with the Green Tide and with that Green Tide list that you've seen. As MSU, running around Sweet Cheeks armies, I simply don't want you to touch them, and you're going to live in the mid-table, scoring a bunch of OC, playing it out secondary. Then you have the guns from the flash kits to kill them as they stage up. All in all, of course, it takes a little bit of luck and high-level skill from player positioning like Lucas Troller. Shout out to Lucas Troller for his list. Let's take one more look at it before we look at the final list of the day, where we go into... He had 2 beast bosses, which of course help with something like a walker, right? We've seen in the war walkers have like a +1. They have like a -1 to wound built into them, right? But war walker doesn't have that many wounds. A beast boss by himself and some flash kits, a 5-man unit of flash kits, popping lethal is picking up that war walker. So these 2 units of beast boss, what are they used for? Something like that, for example. 3 units of pain boys, 2 units of war bosses. 3 units of war bosses, of course, for that elite big brick. Then you have the weird boy with the 10-man unit left over to play the secret mission potential. 2 trucks, 2 10-man unit flash kits, a 5-man unit of flash kits, 1 unit of Grat, and then 2 units of Storm Boys. So shout out to Stroller for taking the green tide, being old faithful to the Orks. As a lot of different other Ork players, even though they say they love the Orks, just gave up on us and went and played Blood Angels, went and played Dark Angels, went and played a bunch of different very elite and highly respectable yet more reliable outcome armies. So a shout out to Lucas Troller and Team America for still taking the Orks to the WTC, giving us some love and attention, giving the green tide and the Great WAAAGH give you a chance to represent America. And even though, Lucas did end up losing a couple of games, it looks like he had some, very respectable matches, and he had some very, very tough factions that he had to go up against. So with that being said, let's take a look at the chat and our final list of the day. So let's see what the chat says. He says, ready for being on your meta watch next week. Let's go, Mr. 2. You better be on that meta. Let's see you, boy. Let's see what you bring with that speed wall, huh? You're going to bring that speed wall. Then we see for the revolution. Oh, okay. I was okay, chat. I know it's late, guys, so chat's a little quieter today. So let's take a look at my boy, Antonio Manello. He has 2 beast bosses. He's running a Bully Boyz. And like we like to call this archetype, this is the Bully WAAAGH archetype. And Antonio's in chat. Shout out to Antonio. So we like to call this the Bully WAAAGH archetype. So we have 2 beast bosses, followed by Gazgul Thraka, 2 pain boys, 2 war bosses. For battle line, he has 2 10-man units of Beast Snagga boys, 2 20-man units of boys, 3 trucks, 1 10-man unit of flash kits, followed by 2 5-man unit of flash kits, a Gretchen unit, 2 Mega Knobs, with 1 with the twin kill saw, 1 with the kill saw, 1 with the power claw, because of course, pick your profile. Then 2 Storm Boys. Nice and clean. No fat on this list. And even though he could have simply brought 2 10-man unit of flash kits, I love that he decided to bring 2 5-man units as disembarking from transports. Activations, such like that, are a bit better in that case. Of course, he does have, as you can see here on this list, a lack of all the transports for everything that he would want to take, as he only has 3 trucks. You would think what he would do. Antonio did end up using strategic reserves for the Beast Snagga boy units, saying that they're a good late ingress target. They're good for setting and denying secret missions. Of course, we know that this list hits pretty hard with having double walls, the boys getting lethal, the Snagga boys, getting lethal and being able to re-roll their hits twice. Feels pretty dang good. I love that he brought a bunch of flash kits, and of course, 2 20-man units of Snagga boys. Just basic boys. It feels very, very nice overall for us Ork players. So let's take a look at Antonio's Bully Tide, where he ended up going 4-2 at this GT. Of course, he did end up losing this first game, which does both to be a bit unfortunate. But it is what it is, right? So let's take a look at his first matchup, and we'll take a look at how that happened. And the reason why, even though he lost this matchup in the first game, which normally I look at the first game and I go, hey, you don't want to necessarily always talk about someone who lost their first game because they could have been dropped into a bracket. Yeah, but in this case, he went to Champions of Rust, and it's something I wanted to talk about, and the Space Wolves, which are known to be a tough matchup. especially with Bjorn the Fell-Handed. So it's funny because when the Vec changed and everybody was like, man, that won't matter no more, cuz, those guys are weak and, we could just kill the assassin. I was one of the few people I know of, at least, that was saying, hey, we have the Hive Tyrant out there. We have, or the Swarmlord, whoever does it. We have Bjorn the Fell-Handed out there. And here we see Bjorn the Fell-Handed. So if you guys don't know who Bjorn is, I'm about to introduce you, cuh. So we have Bjorn, which is a firstborn ancient dread. So that means he is T9, movement 8, 2 up armor save, 8 wounds, 3 OC, 6 leadership. He has the ability to half his damage. So he doesn't reduce damage by 1 like Redemptor Dreadnought. He halves it. Not only that, he has a built-in 5-up Feel No Pain, and he has the ability to pretty much increase the cost of one of your stratagems by 1 CP within 12 inches. So that means you can bring Bjorn and stick him right in the middle of an Orc army and say, come get some. He very much will have a hard time. And in this case, you have no shooting, right? A shooting army looks at this and they're like, I'll just shoot that little butthead and put Meltus into my damage 9 and make him tank that. And even then, he's still pretty hard to kill. That being said, putting Bjorn in the middle of your table is very, very bullysome. So right off the bat, you can see how this can be problematic for Orks to try to deal with if you know the data sheet. Of course, we have Logan Grimnar, but in this case, he's on Storm Rider. We already looked at what he could do. But what we could do is what he does is he gives reroll charges and reroll the hit rolls on the training charges the wall. Of course, he declares this on the charge and like on the charge phase. Then we have a Wolf Lord on Thunderwolf, a Wolf Lord on Thunderwolf, Assault Intercessor, the jump pack, 3 Assault Intercessor jump pack, 2 Fenrisian Wolf squads. These guys are so freaking like value as well. Beyond, says someone tried to correct me. You have 2 units of Fenrisian Wolves. Guys, for value, right alongside Grotz, these guys are. Of course, I don't believe they have any OC, but they're like little Orc boy profiles moving like 10 inches, all right, for 30 points. So shout out to them. 2 units of Scouts, followed by the 3 big bricks of Thunderwolf Cavalry, 3 units of Wolfen, and the Caladius Assassin. So he still brought the Caladius Assassin. So all in all, Antonio has a lot of things that he's going up for against. He said that he pretty much felt like he had a hard time with the dice here. You do need to take a bunch of 2 damage, 5 of Feel No Pain. So your boys are having a hard time with that. You're really not getting reliable outcome on the Flash gets here, as they still do get some decent saves. So he felt like his dice were throwing him off. So all in all, he didn't do quite well there, and he just ended up losing out in the damage game, which I could see that happening here, right? When you're looking at something like Bully Boyz, you actually are taking a I want to kill you stat check kind of profile where you're like, I got to kill you, get your face. There's a little bit of I want to survive with Antonio's list in OC, but like we talked about with the Space Wolf and the Thunder Wolves, is that one, they can stick Bjorn somewhere in this middle. They can stick Logan Grimnar in the Storm Rider with the Thunder Wolf Cav. Those guys get up into the table. They have at least a lot. They have a lot of OC. We'll say they can get up to at least 10 or 12 OC, and they can punch enough of your boys off and place their big old bases in the way where they can push you off the mid-table objective, then slowly whittle you away as they're quite hard to kill. Not to mention all these assault intercessors running in, getting their punches off, their mortal wounds off, the scout squads blocking you, and the friend region wolves blocking you, so they have great positioning here. All in all, a very, very difficult matchup. Antonio did end up losing this one, a 39-point win. Loss, here. And that's something you need to keep in mind when going into Bully Tide or any of these Feel No Pain type lists, is that a lot of different armies have a huge volume of damage too when you're getting competitive as it can be. But I still very much like this Bully Tide list, and it's still one of my favorite archetypes. So let's take a look at a second matchup, because in this game, Antonio ended up putting up damn near 100 points. So he has the Tau Empire. Everybody likes the Tau Empire, but this is the Retaliation Cadre. So we have, sorry, I was looking at this. It's a commander in battle suit, Commander Farsight, Commander Cold Star. He had 3 strike teams, so that's different. A Pathfinder team, 3 stealth suits, 3 Crisis Starscythe battle suits, 2 Sunforge battle suits, and then 2 Riptides, and then 2 Broadside battle suits. So guess what worked out to be very, very helpful in this matchup? He gets the Beast Snagger Boys. So pretty much Antonio said that the Beast Snagger Boys and the Beast Bosses were very, very, very valuable in this matchup, as this player did end up going, I believe, to get into the top 5 in placing. So it's a very effective tile list, even though it looks very off meta. But that his ability to do the devastating wounds just ended up taking over that and just burying the towel in that case. So all in all, I very much like how it could have gone here. I'm let me know, Antonio, right now in the chat. Did you go first here? Because as I was looking at the list right there, I was like, man, that's a lot of killing, but they do lack all of the screening and kind of forward pressure and scouting and staging. So I feel like if you went first, you pressured the crap out of him, beat the crap out of him. So Antonio put 96 points up on that, and the guy ended up getting pretty high in the event. So from what I understand. So as for his third matchup, Antonio went into the Blood Angel, Sons of Sanguinius. So we've seen these boys throughout all the lists we covered today. So if you don't know about Sons of Sanguinius yet, you better get on that, because these gets are everywhere. So we have the Sanguinor, 2 captains, the Judiciar, 2 assault intercessor squads, 2 assault intercessors with jump packs, Blade Guard veteran brick of 6 guys, 1 unit of Death Company Marines with jump pack and all their power fists, 2 scout squads, 2 vindicators, and 3 impulsors. Ooh, the impulsors. How are those impulsors for you, Antonio? Let chat know. But he does lack some of those big Death Company bricks that you want to see them jump into. He does have good fundamentals with the assault jump packs. He does have assault intercessors, which feel great at strength 6. Judiciar, even with blade guards, not even horrible, but it lacks the speed, which is what the Sons of Sanguinius really, really love and appreciate. So not a lot of Death Company here. Not the most potent, meta version of Blood Angels, compared to a WTC list. But if you're going to a GT, you can still expect to see something like this. Very effective list. As you can, like you said before, Vindicators can blow your boys away, as they can blue blast and shoot in combat with multi-damage. And he has the Impulsors to be hard to actually kill stuff, as Impulsors, super cheap, quite durable, and have great data sheet abilities and small arms fire. So Impulsors were really great in this matchup, Antonio said. But overall, he was able to swarm the table and get pretty killy and get stuck in there. So he said it's always pretty hard as the flash gets kind of hit carry and the supply drop mission, though it was a low score going game, which was only a 51-point win. As he said, it's a pretty cagey matchup there when you're trying to set it up there. Then you have his fourth game, which he ended up getting a fat 100 on, was the Black Templars. That must feel pretty good to be able to run in there and just beat up the Black Templars. I love that. So let's see. We have an Apothecary. They're playing Gladius. We have Apothecary Biologist with Fire Discipline, Chaplain Grimaldus, High Marshal Helbrick, Lieutenant with combi weapons for that pick 1 objective, reroll 1, Lieutenant, Primaris Crusader Squad, a big 20-man unit, Black Templar Impulsor, Assault Intercessor Jump Pack Squad, another. So we always see these Assault Intercessor Jump Pack Squad, at least 2, if not 3, on every list. Black Templar Gladiator Lancer, that's 2 of those. Then we have a Repulsor, followed by an Eradicator, a unit of Sword Brethren, 2 Scouts. In my opinion, it looks like he would just run out of steam in this kind of list. Your ability to fight on death, double WAAAGH, withstand a lot of his damage here, run through something like this Crusader squad. I can see you just chewing through this guy. I can see how he got 100 points on this list. Very cool to see. I love to see it. How was it looking at his 20-man unit and being like, I'm going to beat the crap by your 20-man unit, Antonio? Now we go into his second loss, which is against Eldari. So normally I'm like, man, you have enough bodies here. So, I was a bit perplexed that Eldar did end up winning here. So I was a little bit surprised that they ended up losing this matchup, as typically 20-man units do fine. So he said, We have Artark Willy per Phoenix Gem, Avatar of Cain, Farseer Skyrunner. We have Jean Zahn and Cassandra. So, Antonia, I don't understand how these guys were used, but I'm going to show the chat what they did. So, this is what their data sheets are. Very, very weird. These are Eldari units. Antonio, let me know how they were played. So, they have a movement of 8, toughness 3, 2 up save, which is pretty weird for a T3 armor, right? And a 4 up invuln, 5 wounds. Once per turn, you can target this model with a unit for a heroic stratagem for COCP, even if you already used it. And while it's leading a unit, makes an attack, add 1 to the hit roll. And he can lead Howling Banshees. So it looks like he was leading Howling Banshees. And then Cassandra is pretty much his alternative, but for striking Scorpions. So move 7, 2 up armor save, fighting profile. While his model's leading a unit, add 1 to the hit roll. And each time, then if it made a charge roll, a successful a successful unmodified hit roll of a 4+ is a critical hit. Excuse me. And melee's weapons and the Scorpion's bite for the bear in this unit have devastating wounds without Titanic key word. So that's a different kind of data sheet as a whole. And they were leading striking Scorpions. Very unusual. Oop. That was the wrong list. Very unusual list. It looks like they could just punch the crap out of everything. Then we have Warlock Sky Seer Runner, Guardian Defenders, Fire Dragons with the Howling Banshee unit for that character, Rangers, the Striking Scorpion unit for that character, Swooping Hawks, Warwalker, Warp Spiders, and then Wind Riders. So, Antonio, let me know how you lost this matchup, maybe in a little bit in chat too, but what were those characters being played like? I was a bit surprised you lost this one. Maybe because his Beltan is so different. Their abilities catch you off guard, and maybe those characters give just enough fighting potential. But typically, I would think Orks do okay there. They ended up losing that matchup. Antonio did end up getting 49 points there. Now we go into his final matchup. He went into Grey Knights. So for the Grey Knights, we all know the shenanigans all over the place. I'm glad he won this one. We have Brother Captain Stun, Brotherhood Librarian, Grandmaster Voldus, Grandmaster in Nemesis Dread Knight, 1 2 units of Terminators, 5-man units, a Strike Squad, Inceptor Squad, 1 Nemesis Dread Knight, a Purgation Squad, and Canis Rex. So Canis Rex is really good into elite infantry, like we'll say Mega Knobs, but he can do really good into your 20-man units of boys too. To be frank, to be fair, so this is a game you have to be kind of careful on. Canis Rex has been crazy overall throughout the meta. I was surprised that you would kill it, but pretty much he said that he just used all the boys to screen the table, and the rest of his army is trying to kill and screen everything out. So he pretty much went for the scoring units, somewhat tried to ignore Canis Rex as he could, and just stop things from deep striking and scoring where they could. That definitely limits someone's secondary scoring potential. All in all, Grey Knights are one of those things where you have to know their army abilities in order to counteract them, because you have to pre-measure constantly. You have to think of their reactionary moves. You need to think of where you're going to use your stratagems and what you're going to target priority to attack. So love to see it. Love to see when Grey Knights lose, and he ended up taking a 96-point win there. So shout out to Antonio for that. And he said how he lost to the Eldar was that the Wind Riders were popping up and picked up 20-man units. Shout out to that, because Wind Riders are pretty nasty in that case, and he did have a fat 10-man unit. So one last look at Antonio's list that pretty much only had a hard time with Bajoran the Foul-Handed as Space Wolves and a couple of really, really high voluminous Wind Rider and anti-infantry units. So we have 2 units of Beast Bosses, Gazgul Thraka, 2 Pain Bosses, 2 War Bosses, 2 units of Beast Snagga Boys, 2 units of 20 Boys, 3 trucks, a 10-man unit of Flash Kits, 2 5-man unit of Flash Kits, 10-man units of Grots, 2 Mega Knobs for Gaz, and then 2 Storm Boys for Antonio's Bully Tide list. Whoa, for the Bully Tide. Sorry, guys. Randomly got a dry throat there at the end. So, guys, as we can see, that we have a very generous, gifted 5 wall tack tactics gifted from Aaron Whoa for the top 5 wall tactic memberships. So shout out to you. Thank you very much for that. Of course, let's get a war boss in the chat for Aaron. It's very generous to him for all you guys for the raffles and everything we do. It helps support us so we can do what we do. That's a lot of time and effort, and we appreciate it very much. Very generous of you. Now let's get back into it. Thank you, Aaron. I'll leave that up for a second. So as the orcs are learning to see is 1, you need a lot of AP, but 2, you need the beast boss on foot. As we learn to see today that even without the beast snagga boys, we see that people bring a beast boss on foot. Of course, it was just Lucas Troller, but as we've seen, sometimes he's a straight innovator. So we take it into consideration. Snobs, AP, beast bosses for dev wounds are very, very fundamental to orcs and flash kits. So if you're looking to perform somewhat reliably and effectively competitively, I would say stick to some of the fundamentals for orcs right now, which are trucks, storm boys, grots, flash kits, and beast bosses on foot. However you dress that in multiple different detachments and ways you can play it, we'll talk about on the channel. We'll see definitely. You'll see little shorts of different lists that we go over, my own videos and designs and ways to play. So of course, guys, take a look into the our library and what we have. We have our live and we have our actual videos that are edited, because of course everything we do on Wednesdays and Fridays are always live, because we some hardcore gets out here. Because we do these every Wednesday and Friday. So shout out to the Gits and to everybody that performed this weekend. Hey guys, don't be down on the orcs. GW is more likely to take a second look at us. Just keep playing what you're doing, hobby on your stuff, be happy with what you got, because all in all, GW takes a long time to make any changes, and orcs are a slow pace moving army to build and hobby on anyways. So you guys just keep it going. Don't be too down on orcs. Don't start faction hopping, because 1, it'll be harder for you to play with your orcs, and 2, you'll be down on your hobby time. Of course, if you own a bunch of armies and you love them, go ahead. I'm just saying, don't do it out of spite and sadness for your orcs. If you love your orcs, stay with them, and I promise you, there'll be the rise of the tide will come again. So of course, like the great ocean, the tide ebbs and flows, right? And that's okay, guys, because on this channel, but also for orcs as a whole, how they see the world and their universe is, there's ups and downs. It's not always about winning. It's about the experience and the path to get there. So be excited to get stuck in, lads, and we all can learn together. Of course, we can only get better from this, and learning to play the fundamental way with your army and your faction are some of the easiest ways to get better at 40K as a whole. So there's always one thing to keep in mind is don't cross a wall, because we knock your teeth out. Whoa.